This conference will now be recorded.
Let's get into our project, which is ATM class, and this is what we are doing right now. And we said pipelines, and I said we had a first full framework pipeline, and I said, okay, fine, this is what you need to execute and all. But let's do a bit of, or let's understand a bit of code before we go ahead and build our pipeline. Okay, let's do that. So I said we are now building out a code known as what? ASP.NET Full Framework, and we created that code using something known as a Visual Studio, and this was the application that I created. So I had an application, so I'm just building that application out. And what I am telling right now is that the process of build is not a single step. It is a two-step process. It's a first restore and then build. It's a two-step process out here. Then what is exactly the dependency restoration, etc.? This is what we were talking about. And let's talk about it a bit more out here. Now you will need to have a little bit of development bent of mind. You need to have a little bit of understanding of development. But let's start from the very scratch of it. So I'll say ASP.NET. This is a full framework application that I'm building out right now. Let's increase the font size so that everyone can see this. Great. So now what I'm telling is that in order for me, let's say if a developer writes a code for this particular application, let's wait for this to load. This is the actual code. All this index.html, everything is the actual code. Now I am telling that this actual code also takes help from some dependencies. What are different dependencies? Simple piece of softwares that are available online. If I want to develop a code, if I want to develop a full code, and I give an example that I'm a newspaper website, and this newspaper needs to get displayed in Spanish in Europe, English in US, for which I need a very small software known as a plugin, which will help me convert it, which will help me convert the language. So I am saying every software that is helping my code is known as dependencies. Everything that is helping me develop my code, or everything my code is depending upon as a third party software or as a third party tool, is known as a dependency. Now, where do I write a dependency out here in the entire code now, or where does a developer write an entire dependency? Is that you will have configuration files within which you'll declare what dependency your code will, kind of rely on. For example, in my case, these are all the dependencies what my code relies upon. Let's say something like ant3 runtime, newton.json, system.optimization. Now you see this, right? System.web.optimization. This helps you run your website both on your mobile and Google Chrome browser. That's the reason you will get a page telling that okay, fine, this website is web optimized or mobile optimized. All these are the plugins, and these are internal plugins. These are, let's say, internal plugins, and all these are now called as my dependencies. So all these are little piece of softwares which are now called as a dependency for me. And what I'm doing out here is that even before me building my code, now building my code is nothing but what? I'm converting my code from a high level language to a low level language is what a build process is. Even before I end up building my code, I am restoring my dependencies. Now, what is restoration? Making these dependencies, downloading these dependencies and making them available for my code. Okay. So I am saying even before I build my code, I'll download all these dependencies. This process is known as a dependency restoration. Now, how are you doing a dependency restoration depends upon the code what you're using. In case of ASP.NET Full Framework, you need a software known as NuGet. And that's the reason I am downloading. In the first step, I am doing a NuGet download. So I am saying I need something known as NuGet.exe. This NuGet.exe, right? I've already downloaded on my computer. Whenever I downloaded Visual Studio, it ended up downloading NuGet.exe as well internally. So that's the reason I'm not explicitly downloading a NuGet.exe out here. Second thing, I'm saying, okay, fine, please download this NuGet. Where am I downloading this NuGet? In case of a pipeline, I'm downloading this on the Azure hosted machine because I'm using an Azure agent. So I'm downloading this NuGet.exe on top of the virtual machine, what Azure is providing me. Using this NuGet, I am doing what? A dependency restoration. And all these dependencies are mentioned where? In this particular file called a web.config file. So whenever I'm doing a dependency restoration, my pipeline is going into this particular file, understanding what the dependencies are and restoring the dependencies. And where is it restoring the dependencies from, guys? Where should it go and restore the dependencies from? Anyone? Anyone?
Artifacts.
So artifacts, no, artifact is the end product. Where is it going? It's going to nuget.org. It's going to a website known as nuget.org, going there, getting all these dependencies, getting all these pieces of softwares, downloading it, and making it readily available for my code. This is the dependency restoration process. First step. Second is I'm building it, meaning even when I basically go here and say build, it's saying build started, it's saying debug any CPU, and the first thing that will ever happen is a restoration procedure. It said, okay, fine, I started the build. Internally, I am restoring all my dependencies. And since I've already built, right, I have done like a build initially. That's the reason it's not showing me a restoration procedure out here. If I did not do a build already, it would have showed me a restoration. So first is your dependency restoration. Whatever is the dependencies are there, whatever the dependencies are there for your code, you're restoring all of those things out. Meaning, let's imagine that this is a relationship between a storage account and a resource group. Storage account is your actual code. You want to go ahead and build, create a storage account. But to create a storage account, you need a resource group, right? This is where the resource group, or I'm restoring something already. So I'm saying there's already a resource group out there. I'm saying use that particular resource group. In the same way, developers do something known as a dependency restoration out here. And this particular dependency restoration is being helped in by something known as nuget.exe. And what I did yesterday is that I created a code on my local machine, checked in that code inside the Azure repository. I have the Dotnet full framework basically in here. I said, okay, fine, I'll basically, clone my repository firstly. And I said, then I pulled up let's say a feature branch from the develop 1.0. And we are following what? The branching and merging strategy. We said, okay, fine. If someone needs to approve this, that someone is someone else. I said logged in with an account known as contributor and then approved my PR. Once I approved my PR, I created something known as a build pipeline. And I said, okay, fine, let's trigger this build pipeline out. And this build pipeline ran successfully. And let's see how does this build pipeline is running. Okay. I said I named the pipeline as a build pipeline. And the first thing it's doing, it's that it's initializing the job. And if you read the logs, guys, can anyone tell me what this is doing here? If someone can read a log out here and tell me or give me an idea on what this is doing out here. Okay. So it's not creating a virtual machine. It's acquiring of an agent or it's acquiring an existing machine. It's saying, okay, fine, I'm acquiring a machine. This machine name is something like Win, something like this. So what it's doing is that it knows now that you need to build your code. You need a virtual machine and you need what? Visual Studio installed on that virtual machine. This is the step which is going ahead and getting that particular virtual machine. And who's giving me this virtual machine, guys? Am I creating this out? Azure or Microsoft is giving me this out. That's the reason this is called a hosted agent or a Microsoft hosted machine. Okay. After I'm getting this machine, what am I doing? I need to make sure that I build the code on this machine, right? So if I, let's say, want to build the code on my local machine, this is my local. I am only able to build the code because this code is existing in some path. I'm opening that path and I'm building the code. In the same way, don't you think that this code, whatever is there in your Azure repository, now this code is there in where? Your Azure repos. Let's open the repo in the other page. Now let's say this is the repository that I have. I have pushed all my code into this particular repository, right? My code is here. Now I said that the first phase is to do what? Acquiring an agent. It got the agent. Does the agent have the code on top of it? No. Yes, no, maybe. The agent does not have a code. It's a blank virtual machine with a Visual Studio. So for that agent, now you're using that agent in order to build your code. So don't you think that the agent should have the code already on top of it so that it can build? It should have, right? Because I'm only able to build my code because I have the code in my local machine in some path. In the same way, just imagine if the agent doesn't have the code, then it will fail. That's the reason what Azure is doing out here, or what DevOps is doing out here, is that it's doing a checkout. What the checkout is doing, it's saying I am using something known as ASP.NET @develop 1.0. What is this, guys? Can anyone tell me what this is?
It's a branch, right?
Exactly, it's a branch. So it is telling ASP.NET is the repository name. The name of the repository that I was working on is called what? ASP.NET repo. Inside which what? Branch. It's saying I have this branch. Sorry, I have the repository, I have the branch, and I want to copy all the code from this repository, from this branch, into a folder known as S. S stands for source. Into a folder called as S. This folder exists where? On the agent machine. So I'm doing a copy of the code, or I'm doing a clone of my code from what? From the Azure repository, or this is known as a remote repository. From the remote repository into what? The agent machine. That's the first step. So what it's doing out here, it's telling, okay, fine, get a version and etc. It's using a few commands here. And if you look at this, it's just downloading all your code. It's saying, okay, fine, I'm downloading all this code. And finally it said, okay, fine, the code is now downloaded into what? The source folder or the S folder of the agent. Okay, fair enough until here what we are trying to do and etc. So I'm just doing a continuation from yesterday's class where I said we built or we created a build pipeline. So creating a build pipeline, until here everyone is comfortable, guys? Is anyone facing an issue here while creating a build pipeline or something like this? All good? So I said downloaded the code. Next thing, what is the pipeline doing? Is using what? Use NuGet exe. Meaning I am saying install something known as what? NuGet.exe version 4.4.1. Why am I doing this? Anyone? Why am I doing this?
Pull all
Dependency
plugins.
restoration. Yes, exactly. To download the plugins, or let's say if I want to put it in a technical terminology, to restore my dependencies. So in order to restore my dependency, I need a software known as NuGet.exe, which will connect to a website known as NuGet.org and download all these plugins out. So what I'm doing out here is saying, okay, fine, using this particular tool with the version 4.4 something 1. It's saying found the tool x64, meaning 64-bit version, using the path C hosted window something like this. Where is this drive? Where is this folder? On the agent machine, right? On the agent. So it's telling I am downloading this and I am giving an environment variable so that agent now can use something known as NuGet.exe. Everything is getting on the agent machine. I'm not doing anything on my local right now. Okay. Because if I now do it on my local, there is no difference between doing a developer basically building his code on the local machine and on the cloud. Because again, you're using the local machine. I don't want to do that. I want to set a standard here. That's when I'm basically going ahead and using something known as an Azure DevOps agent. Then it's saying I have downloaded, let's say, something known as NuGet, and before building, I will do a restoration. It's saying all the packages are already installed because all these are internal dependencies. If it is not installed, it would have gone ahead to something known as nuget.org, downloaded everything. Okay, in my case, since this is a very simple code, this doesn't really have any external dependencies. These are all internal. If there were external dependencies, you should have definitely done this step. That's the reason. That's the reason. Even whether it's an external or an internal dependency, we go ahead and do a NuGet restore. Because you can never say, because I am not a developer, I don't have an idea of development. So if let's say tomorrow the developer checks in something like an external dependency, then his code will fail if there is no NuGet restore. So that's the reason NuGet restore is taking somewhere around what, 7 seconds. I'm okay with this. That's the reason I'm explicitly saying please go ahead and restore NuGet or restore the dependencies out here. Okay. Then finally I'm doing what? A build solution. This is where I am going into a particular folder. Which folder, guys? Correct. But where is the solution file? In the virtual machine right now. In which folder? S folder. That's the reason it's saying DA something something S. And inside that S folder, it's able to get something known as the SLN file. This is where it's getting it. Okay, this is where I have downloaded all the code. So even the SLN file will be in the machine. It's not on the local right now. Nothing is on the local right now. It's on the virtual machine. I'm targeting it, building the file. And after I build, what I get? DLLs, artifacts. Yes, exactly. So what I'm doing is that here, if you look at this, everything would have now been converted into something known as DLL. Even the dependency is converted into DLL. That's when your code can use it. That's the reason I am doing a restoration firstly. Okay. So I am saying, okay, fine. I'm restoring all my dependencies. I'm building also my dependencies, converting them into DLLs. And at the end, right, if I scroll down all the way together, I've converted everything into a DLL. And finally, I've taken all the DLL and I've packaged it into a .zip file, meaning all the DLLs came to you. You're putting all the DLLs in a folder. You're archiving that folder. Okay, you're archiving. You're doing a zip of that folder. And then this is the zip that you are publishing as what? Artifact. And where you're publishing this artifact in? On the Azure pipeline. Because when you said artifacts, I said this artifacts will be published in the Azure pipeline. And this is the step which publishes it. It's going ahead and doing what? A publishing of the artifact into what? A drop folder or build.artifact staging directory. Okay. Now after this pipeline is run, I have something known as artifacts and it says one published artifact. If I click here into the drop, I'm getting this particular folder. This is very important. These are all my DLLs placed together inside a folder, zipped out. Okay. So again, if I want to basically see the definition of my pipeline, edit pipeline, and this is what my pipeline really looks like. It says use NuGet, first step. So initially, even before this started, it's doing a checkout, meaning it's downloading all the code from the remote repository into the S folder of the agent. Using a NuGet exe, it's downloading the tool known as a NuGet exe. Then doing what? Doing a dependency restoration. and it's looking for the solution file to understand what are the dependencies. And finally, it's saying build a solution. And while I'm building the solution, right, I am passing something known as arguments. I'm saying deploy on build is equal to true. Yes, I want to deploy it. Second thing, I'm saying web publish method is a package. That's the reason my code is getting converted into a package, into a .zip file. And I'm saying, okay, fine. After you build it, please publish it into, let's say, what, build.artifact staging directory. I am making my artifacts ready for it. Finally, I am saying publish the artifact. Publishing the artifact where? Into the drop location, or otherwise known as what? Build.artifacts staging directory. And I'm saying this is the location where you need to store your artifacts in. Guys, good until here? Is everyone able to follow this? This is very important. So that's the reason I'm asking again and again. Even if you have missed even a very single step, please let me know. I'll explain that again. If you're not following, let me know. I'll explain that again. So is everyone able to follow this out?
Can you go back to this concept again, Kiran?
Which concept exactly?
Yeah, the same thing. The step. Can you go back? Maybe I'll take it.
This one?
The publishing artifact.
Okay.
Not yet. Before you mentioned
On the pipeline, is it?
Yeah.
Let's open this run.
Yeah. Yeah, this one. Publish.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, should I just explain this?
A solution.
Yeah, it is building the solution file. So build solution is nothing but this. Going into this, telling a build. This is a build process. After I build it, what I'm doing is that I am making sure that the entire DLLs are zipped together. Meaning, what is happening right now is that when I build here in my local machine, right? Let's wait for a second so that the build gets done. So it said, okay, fine, building 0, fine. Let's do one thing. Let's open my file in folder explorer. And let's see, object, debug. These are all the applications that I have. So after I build, this is how I'm getting it. It's saying this is the main application. It says something like .NET DLL. This is the main application that I have. What this is doing right now on the pipeline is that I have passed in something known as a build argument, where I'm saying please package it after you build it. So it's taking everything. It's taking the entire folder, converting it into something known as .zip file. Okay, it's converting into a .zip file, and then it is publishing your artifact. So here it's converting your build into something known as a .zip. Here it is publishing the artifact into what? DA1A. When I'm talking about S folder, it was a source. When I'm talking about an A folder, this is called as the artifact staging directory, meaning the place where you place all your artifacts in. Got this?
Yeah.
So I'm placing all my artifacts into this particular folder. So three things, guys, out here is that the very first step of everything is to copy my code from a remote repository into what? The source folder of the agent machine. I'm saying this is the source folder of the agent machine, S folder. After S, what I'm doing? Dependency restoration by using something known as NuGet.exe. So I'm downloading a tool known as NuGet.exe, and I am doing a dependency restoration. So I am doing what? Next, a restoration procedure. I'll say restore. Restoration. Then what? Building my code and converting into what? or .zip file. Finally, uploading this .zip file into what? A folder known as A, artifact staging directory. And this folder, right, inside the agent machine is now exposed through this URL. I'll be able to download this artifact. This artifact is placed inside a folder known as A. This is how it will look like. I said, okay, fine, that folder is now exposed through this particular URL. You can just click this and you can download it out. You can download the entire zip file. Okay, this is how I am able to generate the artifact. Good till here, guys. I didn't get you. I'm sorry. Directory and file name. This one. Yes. Path to publish directory is until the A folder. So something /A. I want to publish all the files inside a path in that directory. Which one? Sorry. Multiple files. What will happen is that all the files will be uploaded into this particular folder known as drop. So you have a folder. Now I have a multiple file here. After I publish my artifact, it's called one published. I have multiple files. All the files are there in a folder called A. Inside that folder, I uploaded another folder called drop. Inside drop, I have multiple files. So even if there are multiple files, everything will be contained inside this folder known as drop.
So the A directory and S directories are defined by Azure only.
Yes,
Right?
in this particular,
we are not going to give them.
no, we are not defining that. So what happens is that even if you have your own self-hosted machine, all these directories are defined in the same exact way on how basically they are defined in, let's say, an Azure hosted machine. Because this is how Microsoft will follow that. Okay, fine, this is the directory path. This is where I need to place things out and stuff like that. You can publish. So if you have multiple folders, right? Let's say you have drop 1, drop 2, drop 3, and etc. I need at least one parent folder which can hold all these things. My parent folder can be drop. Inside that I can have multiple folders like drop 1, drop 2, drop 3, drop 4, and etc. We'll also look at that because we'll see how multiple folders and etc. how they are kind of configured and etc. and all that stuff. Okay. So what's happening right now is that, to give an example, let's go into my folder structure. So this is how things will look on the Azure machine. Let's imagine that this is the Azure hosted machine. Something like this, inside which it will have A, B, S. A is the artifact staging directory. S is what? Source directory. So source directory will have all the code. Artifact directory will have what? .zip files and etc. In my case, I haven't done a .zip file and stuff like that because I was building something else. And this machine that I'm using right now, I have converted this machine into an agent because I didn't want to create a virtual machine and all that stuff. So whatever builds that I run on top of this machine. That's the reason you're able to see all these things out. I'll tell you how to do that and etc. But this is how the folder structure is going to be on the agent. So you have a NuGet folder, and inside this there was something known as NuGet.exe download. I deleted it out. Okay. So this is how Azure will treat the agent. Let's imagine that this is the virtual machine what Azure is using in order to basically help you build out your code. These are all the folders what Azure will create on that particular machine. Download all your code and etc. Download all your code. So I have a solution file and all that stuff. Will download all the code, build all the code, and zip that code. For example, in my case, all the code was zipped. Zip that code out and give you that code in the form of something known as an artifact. Okay, guys, good until here? Is this confusing? Is everyone on the same page that I am on? Is this good? Is this okay? Guys, the reason I'm emphasizing on this is just because this is, let's say, the building basic of everything. What we're going to do next. This is a building block of everything. So I want to make sure that everyone understands this process on what happens and how it happens and etc. Okay. Any questions till here? Anything till here that I can take? Now, just going a step back, I said this is the procedure to build an ASP.NET application. There is also something known as ASP.NET Core. Let's say something known as what? .NET Core. I also have something called .NET Core application as well. Now, .NET Core is different from ASP.NET Full Framework. There are two flavors out here what Windows offers. ASP.NET Full Framework, which was the old framework. Like no one right now is using ASP.NET Full Framework. Like most of the projects are using .NET Core. Then what is the difference between these two things? Like in the form of a code, what is the difference between these two things? Is that very importantly, the applications that are built on ASP.NET can only run on Windows operating systems. ASP.NET Full Framework can only be compiled and understood by a Windows operating system. Okay, this is the very first difference. Windows ASP.NET applications, meaning I have created an application out here, right? This application can only be run on a Windows operating system. Meaning at the end of the day, you will have to deploy this application on a web app, on a virtual machine. What is the underlying operating system of the virtual machine? Is that if this is the code, it can only be Windows. But .NET Core is called platform independent, meaning the operating system on which this can run, the applications that you build out of this particular code known as .NET Core, can run both on Windows and Linux. So it's either Windows or Linux. It is not platform dependent, it is platform independent. Meaning even if you have a Linux virtual machine, you will be able to go ahead and build that code using, let's say, or build this code using a Linux operating system or a Windows operating system, anything. And this code can also run on a virtual machine that is running on Linux or an Azure web app that is running on Linux and Windows both. .NET Core. Now coming down to the coding part of it. I said code consists of two things, the actual code and the dependency of it, right? Now when I said a dependency restoration, what was I doing in ASP.NET, guys? Anyone? When I said it is ASP.NET, I said it is two-step procedure. First, restore. How am I restoring it? NuGet. I'm using something known as NuGet.exe. With the help of NuGet.exe, I'm restoring this. In .NET, you don't need to use a NuGet. The dependency restoration doesn't need a NuGet because .NET Core has the capability to restore its own dependencies. And the command for that, I mean the command what .NET Core uses is called a .NET restore. This is called a .NET restoration procedure. Meaning, if I have something like a .NET code with me, it's a .NET .NET Core code with me. Let's go here and let's see if I have a full. Let's see if I can create a .NET Core code. Okay, so I am saying new project. So I'm now creating a new project which is of an ASP.NET Core application, not a full framework right now. Let's say this is the core web app. This is how I create it. I'll say next. I'll say this is ASP.NET core application. Yesterday we did a full framework, right? It's a core application. I'll say next. Let's say create. That's it. This is what I'm doing right now. So let's give it a second so that it will load and it'll give me a code to work around with. And this is what a core application, not a full framework. It can run both on Windows and Linux, platform independent. And that's the reason this is a lot popular. And I can say, okay, fine, pages. I'll have the index.html again. Same thing. I'm just saying, okay, fine, this is about class and etc. I'll say this is version 1 .NET Core. Okay, fair enough. Now I'll say open file in folder explorer. I have a solution file. If I take this path and go into my CMD console and I'll say cd and I am doing .NET space restore. I'm just giving a command known as .NET space restore and it says, okay, fine, I have restored all your projects. It did not use a service known as NuGet. It doesn't need a service known as NuGet. So the restoration procedure is fast. Because if it is NuGet, right, the first step you'll have to do is download the NuGet tool. Using that particular NuGet tool, you need to go into something known as NuGet.org and then download all your dependencies. Here, .NET Core is not doing that. .NET Core is a bit advanced. But in order to do this procedure called .NET Restore, you will need something known as SDK, Software Development Kit, which I have installed on my machine. Whenever I installed something known as Visual Studio, it went ahead and installed something known as Software Development Kit out here. And since I have a Software Development Kit, I am able to write this language known as .NET. And I'm doing a command known as .NET Restore. The same thing, I am now saying that, okay, fine, let's use a pipeline to do it. How do I do it? Let's go back. So I have multiple branches. I'll again say clone this branch. So I'm going to the develop branch. And let me do one thing here. I don't want to again open this out in a different, let's say, portal out there. Or that's fine, I can do that. Let's say go ahead. I'll just clone this out. I'll say, clone in VS Code. Open. So it'll now clone everything and do all that stuff here. So let's give it a second. So I can either again reclone it, or since I have already cloned it, right? Like yesterday I've cloned it, right? I've cloned it into, let's say, something like a H folder here. This was my clone. I can just open this folder in VS Code. Okay, I'm opening this folder in VS Code and I'm saying, okay, fine. Okay, it says initialize repository and all that stuff. Let's see, yes. Now it is telling, okay, fine, there is a repository. I'll firstly pull all the changes from the remote repository, whatever changes there in the remote repository. I'm pulling all this change into, let's say, my local machine. Okay, great, not a problem. I'll switch it to, let's say, the develop branch. It's deleted. That's the reason it's not showing it. That's the reason I'm making a switch. I'm now saying that my checkout branch is what? Develop 1.0. And I'll pull this branch into my local just to make sure it is updated. I'm just pulling. So instead of doing a clone, I'm just pulling all these changes here. So let's give it a second. pull all these changes out here. Pulled. This is the folder. It has ASP.NET full framework, everything, and etc. Now what I'll do is that I have also created a code, right, for let's say .NET Core. Where is that? Let's see. This is the entire folder that I have for ASP.NET Core. Copy this, go into the H drive. Wherever my code is cloned, I'll go into that particular drive here. This is the code. I'll paste it. Pasted it. Coming back to my VS Code right now, it says I have multiple changes, around 67 changes to be precise. And I cannot directly commit onto the develop branch, right? I cannot do that. So I'll say create a new branch. I'll say feature SM200. Enter. I'm checking this branch out. I'll stage all my changes. Then commit my changes. Publish my changes. So stage this out. I'll say this is ASP.NET Core code. Committing all my change. Publishing my changes. Publish all my change. I'll go into the remote repository, meaning into the Azure DevOps. I have feature 200, which is all this code. What should I do next? How do I merge it? Creating a pull request or a PR. I'll say pull request develop 1.0, and I'll say create, and also link a work item here because that's a mandatory check. I'll say create a pull request. I'll say approve, but it's still not merging it. Why? Contributor should approve it. I cannot approve my own change. So I'll just use an incognito window right now. Go into dev.azure.com. I'll log in as a contributor here. No, I did not remove the policy. I put the policy still. I could have removed it, but I didn't want it to. Okay, RVAC contributor @gmail.com. Even if I open the gmail.com, I would have got a notification by now telling that you know what, you have a PR. I'm going into the ATM project and I'm saying pull requests. There is one there. It's saying I'm required for it. I'll review all the files that are coming in. Say this is good. Complete. And I can delete this branch right now. Meaning I have not created this. As a contributor, I have not created this branch. But as an administrator, I did create this. So that's the reason I have a delete option. I can say complete merge. So what I did right now, into my develop branch, if you look at this out right now, this is the main, but let's say if I look at the develop 1.0, I have both what? Full framework and the core application. Now I want to create a pipeline for the core application. Yesterday I've created a pipeline for what? Full framework. Now I will say pipelines, new pipeline, same like the way that we started yesterday, using classic editor, not using a YAML yet, using a classic editor now. I'm saying core, I'm saying what? Develop 1.0, continue. And I can say, okay, fine. This is all what? ASP.NET full framework. If I just come down, you have Python. You asked me, right? Python. You can say Python. You can say others also. But right now I have what? Core. Apply. This is how core is going to look like. It's doing a restore using something known as a .NET command. It's saying, okay, fine. I'll go ahead and restore something known as what? That particular solution file. Like I did on my local here, agent is now helping me do a .NET restore. Building it out, testing, publishing. Now, since I do not have any test cases with me, I can remove this out. That's it. Now, what I'll do out here is that pipeline needs some attention. It says Azure pipelines. I'll say, okay, fine. This is Windows latest. I'll say this is the Windows latest operating system that I want you to go ahead and build out. And it is telling what is the path to your project. I would say I'll go into the repository, and this is the application. This is the SLN file of the application, right? I'll take this and I'll say this is the solution file I want you to build, which is what? ASP.NET Core Application.sln. Restoration procedure will also target this file. Build procedure will also target this file. Publish is also saying build. I'll say what is build configuration. I'll talk about it. But it's saying output into what? Build dot artifact staging directory. Finally, publish all the artifacts into the drop location. And we can say that this is first pipeline, but not a full framework. This is a core. Save and queue. And then finally save and run. Same thing. I am just using a template out here. Let's refresh this page. Let's go into my pipelines. Now I have a core pipeline that is scheduled to run. So first thing, initializing job or acquiring the agent from the cloud. Second is what? Taking that particular agent, taking all that code and pushing it into where? The agent. It's restoration. Restoring all the dependencies using something known as .NET restore. That's the step it is performing here. It might fail at publish. So let's see. Yeah, it did fail at publish. It's building the code. So it's telling, okay, fine, I'm building the code. And what is it targeting here? It's targeting the SLN file here, guys. Or it's rather going to something known as a CS project file, and it's targeting this application. And the publish failed. I'll fix that in a minute. Let's come back into my pipeline. Just remove this out, okay? By default, it'll say publish web projects. Just remove this out. Say save and queue, save and run. It should run right now. So first thing is an initialize job. It will acquire an agent from the what? Cloud. It's saying, okay, fine, acquiring an agent from the cloud, or waiting for Azure to give me an agent, or waiting from Microsoft to give me an agent. Checking out the code, restoring, building, publishing it out, and then finally give an artifact out of it. So this will take about a minute or so. So let's give it a shot. Now it's saying, okay, fine, restore. It's using a .NET restore command out here. Finally, it's doing a build, publish, then publish the artifact out here. So it's saying, okay, fine, all the projects are restored. I'll go ahead and build out in this particular phase. After I build out, I'll say I'll publish it. Finally, I will do a publish artifact out here. Publish artifact, done. Finally, post checkout. And if I come back here, it says one artifact is published. .zip. This is my main folder right now. Or this is rather the main difference between an ASP.NET full framework and a .NET core when coming to what? A build pipeline. In the similar way, you can use different projects like Java, Python, Ruby, PHP, whatever is your code is, you can use a build pipeline to build it. Okay, I'll explain how you can do that. We'll do a lot of projects and all. We'll see how you can build your projects and etc. Any questions here, guys? Any questions? Anything?
Sir,
Mhm.
sir, in internet, can we get this process in step-by-step CI/CD? And when we are doing this process, we may get stop in middle. Okay, for that, can we get a step-by-step process in net?
Yeah,
Then
you
we
can.
can do.
Mhm. So you can do a step. I mean, you will basically you can search for this particular documentation. You have Azure DevOps documentations as well. So I'll say Azure DevOps documentation. Azure DevOps documentations. You have like a whole list of documentation out here, and it says what DevOps is and etc. Just click on any random link out here. You will get key concepts and etc. Source control and everything. Finally, just see what is a pipeline. Let's see if there's a pipeline here. Pipelines. There are no pipelines, then let's say Azure DevOps pipelines. And you have all this documentation. You're telling what is an Azure pipeline, how do you build an Azure pipeline. You have tutorial for different things like what Kubernetes, Java, Python, PHP. You have like Android, .NET Core, everything. Everything is there in the documentation. I'm not doing anything out of the box. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And sir, one more doubt. Most
Mhm.
probably in our companies we will use .NET Core or some other like PHP and Java. All those also there, no, sir.
It depends upon your developing team again. So I really cannot
Okay.
comment on that because let's say if you're using Microsoft Azure as your stack, it will mostly be .NET because .NET is a product which is developed by Microsoft. So it integrates very well. So most of the projects where I worked, we use a lot of .NET. We used to use a lot of .NET, Java, and etc. But from a code, don't be worried. It's just the pipeline what you need to change. And I'll also explain how can you create different pipelines. Let's say you're working on a project for, let's say you're supporting Python. You don't know how to build a pipeline. I'll tell you how to build a pipeline for that. I'll show you how to build a pipeline for that as
Sir, my client asked me one thing that
well. Mhm.
data related pipeline.
Data related pipeline as in like, can you please elaborate on that?
Just they given me one word. Do you know about data related pipeline, sir? That's why I did not understand that data related pipeline. I said
Okay. There's
I worked on only infra as a code pipeline only. I worked on. I said the same.
meaning there is, let's say, data pipeline as in like they might have had something like a database project. So for database
Okay.
project, right, if you're writing code in something like SQL, now at the end of, let's say, building this pipeline, we are getting a .zip file, right? When you build
Yeah.
something known as a SQL project, you will get a .dac pack. That's a database project. So we'll see that. We'll look into how basically you can build that and all that stuff.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions here, guys? All good? Guys, please try this out. These are very, very basics. I mean, these are very important basics that is what I would say. And any questions, anything, whether it can be a small, big question, or if you do not understand the concept, please let me know. I'm okay to do this again because this is going to be everything that we do on. DevOps is again we are going to use because as a DevOps engineer, this is something that we'll be using day in day out. Okay, so please make sure if you're not following anything, please make sure to let me know. I'll help you out with that. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Sir, just now we created one pipeline, no, sir.
Yes.
That pipeline we have to call it as infra as a code pipeline or pipeline as a code.
No, this is no. You're not. You're getting confused between infra as a code and pipeline as a code. If I say pipeline as a code, I'm writing a pipeline in a language known as YAML. That's a pipeline as
Okay.
a code. If you're saying infra as a code, you're making use of ARM templates in your pipeline, which I haven't done yet. So I have not
Okay,
either done an infra as a code, neither a pipeline as a code. I'm using a classic editor to build a code, which is
okay,
written
sir.
in
I
a .NET. Yeah.
got it, sir. Got it. Understand.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a great day ahead.